It wasn't so much Krusher as it was cruise control, as Sergey Kovalev regained his WBO light heavyweight championship off Eleider Alvarez, who did him in 7 rounds, I think, last time out around the fall of 2018. This time he pretty much won every round, much more measured under Buddy McGirt, a former very good fighter of course, and a pretty renowned trainer as well for as long as he's been one. He managed to get Kovalev to focus more on taming his opponent rather than taking him out, and it made the Russian much more difficult to defeat. Kovalev wasn't giving him as many chances. He wasn't tapping him in there. He was trying to sink in some good shots, particularly in the last round when he knew he had the victory and the fight by the scruff of the neck. He was putting some good weight behind his vicious cross, but it was really the type of combinations that Kovalev threw. He was throwing a lot of 1-2-3s, keeping them all straight, ending a lot of his combinations on the jab, which is the smart thing to do as you end it in the defensive correct posture and you're off again. So he was taking a lot more backward steps after having his little shots. I also saw spoiling tactics by the Russian. This is where he was mugged a little bit by Ward in their fight, particularly the rematch. And in the first fight with Alvarez, Kovalev allowed himself to be pushed back. He had no wherewithal in the middle, on the inside. This time he was leaning on his head. He did get told off for that earlier on, but he had the right kind of idea, the spoiling tactics. And then later on he was getting underneath his arm and turning him round. And these are the things you need to do to frustrate, to round off your performance, to insist that we're going to continue to box at the range that I decide at, and then I'm going to keep just spoiling you. So from a boxing standpoint, it was about as good as we've seen Kovalev so far. As I said, he wasn't looking to take this guy out. He always had that reverse gear engaged, which was good to say. It was a more mature performance. And one of the most notable things, Kovalev's fitness. Now, in his losses to Ward and, of course, in his loss to Alvarez, we'd seen Kovalev gas a little bit before. His mouth was open. We're thinking, what's going on here? Now, in this fight, both of them had an amusing thing where they were squeezing out every last drop out of the corner before the second's out. They were both on their stools a lot of the time and rose just as the bell went. They were both doing that funny tactic, but still, Kovalev's stamina, in this case, was definitely better. He wasn't really breathing through the mouth, and he was throwing a fair amount of shots. You know, this was a fairly high volume fight from his end, but he just seemed to get stronger as things went on. So altogether, the fact he just took the fight straight away after getting so brutally dispatched by Alvarez showed character in itself, and he's done very well to come back. Now, I happily hold up my hand. I'm always happy to be wrong a lot of the time, because the fighter ends up showing me something that I doubted that he had. It looks like Kovalev has come back. He's more mature. He's listening to his trainer this time, and he boxes pretty well. He was showing me some different moves. He was often, as you see some fighters do, he was deciding which hand he wanted to lead with, and he had his weight on the back foot and was moving the shoulders, and then sometimes he'd wait for him to commit, and then he'd ping him with a lead right, end it with a stiff jab, then back to moving. It was nice and neat from Kovalev. Now, from Alvarez's side, there wasn't a lot of imagination. A lot of the time when Kovalev was landing 4s up to 6, punch combinations on him, he just tucked up behind his guard. He didn't really do anything. And if he had a bit more to him, he really should have been looking through the guard at that point and looking for, say, a big counter hook that Kovalev, was kind of open to, because he doesn't really keep his chin down when he's letting his shots go. So Alvarez could have done more had he been a bit more sophisticated, but he was rendered into a bit of a plodder. So you can't really take away from Kovalev. Goes right back at the guy who took him out and does the business. Arguably his best performance so far as a fighter. Now there is, of course, Dmitry Bivol, and we have Artur Beterbiev. We have all these great Eastern, I guess I should say, nearer the Russia, and is Bivol from Kazakhstan? I'm not 100% sure, but there's a lot of talent around that area. And we'd love to see those fights happen, particularly the fact we didn't get Kovalev-Stevenson. It would be great to see one of those combinations. But as we know, as I've heard, Kovalev could be facing up to 4 years in jail for assault. So his future, as things stand, is pretty uncertain at the moment. But regaining his WBO light heavyweight championship, I'm sure, after everything he's been through and all the doubts, will have been pretty cathartic.